I will demonstrate an experimental programming language. And the language is called Vimana or VimanaLang. And I developed it over the last couple of days. It's heavily influenced by Lisp and also by Forth. Lisp is one of my favorite programming languages. I programmed a lot of Lisp in the 1980s, and Smalltalk and so on. I enjoy dynamic programming languages, and I made this language for fun, basically, to experiment a bit. And it's an interesting experience because I have not implemented an interpreter, not like this previously. Okay, so it's actually implemented in PHP. This is the PHP file. It's called workbench.php. Here you can experiment with the code. So there are two files to include: interpreter.php and primitives.php. And here is the actual Vimana code, just as a text string. And the language is list oriented. The syntax is list oriented. So this is actually a list with two elements. And the first, and these elements are symbols. So the first one, hello world. That's like I use it like a string, basically. And print line is a primitive that will output this object here. So notice the underscore, that makes it one symbol. So I notice I don't use string quote marks. So the idea is to keep this as basic as possible. And the reason hello world works as a kind of symbol, literal symbol here, is that it's not defined. It could also be a variable, but now it happens it's not bound to any value, so therefore it represents the symbol itself. And here again is some PHP code to evaluate this program here. Okay, to run it I have PHP installed on my computer. So I say PHP workbench.php. So here we go. And it outputs hello world. Okay, now we can do some more stuff. I mentioned Forth, and Forth is a bit special. It uses so-called reverse Polish notation. Lisp uses a prefix notation. Okay, so this is like the reverse of Lisp. So to add two numbers, I say 1, 2, and plus. So plus is the function. It's always the parameters first and then the function. And to see something, I say print line like that. Okay, so I save it and run it again. And we get 3. Okay. And we can okay, so let's write the function. So a function is written, it's a list, okay? So first it's the name of the function. So just let's call the function double. It will take a parameter x and it will double that value. So it's x, 2 and multiplied. and that's the end of the function, and to define it I call a primitive predefined function called def. That's short for define. So it's like define or defun in Lisp. And now let's call that function. So we say, for example, 22 double and print the result. I could make a read eval print loop out of this, but I find it more handy to type in stuff in this workbench file and then just run it. And I could also implement something arranged so that it would automatically run when the file is saved, update. I haven't done that yet. Sort of auto reload, okay, so to speak. Yeah. And here we see we get 44. All right. So that's a simple function. And we can look at this function. We cannot type just double print line, because double is a function. It will attempt to evaluate something. So now it will probably, if we run this, it will probably be bad. Yeah, it says non-numeric value encountered. So yeah, it didn't work as expected because the stack was empty. Okay, so now in Lisp, lists are evaluated unless you quote them. In Lisp, the first element in a Lisp is the function name. So just to compare, if you have experience with Scheme or some Lisp implementation, you would do like this: double 22, and by convention the first element is a function. But so in Lisp, by convention, lists are evaluated, and you have to say quote to make it a sort of speak a literal list. Okay. So that's in Lisp is the name of the language, unless you haven't heard of it. Okay, it's a very cool language. Okay, and it's an old language from the 60s or something, maybe even earlier. At least the 60s. So this is this is the reverse of Lisp in this sense. It uses, because in Forth you do like this: 1 plus 1 2 plus. Okay. In Lisp you would say plus 1 2. Okay. So we can use a trick here, and so when double is in a list, it won't get evaluated. And then we can call a function called value. That's also a primitive. And value will evaluate what's in this list. And that will be the function defined up here. So let's look at how this, what this looks like. Okay, so here we see the output. So since I've used PHP, just for convenience, because it's quick to develop in. Okay, this is a PHP array. That's how lists are implemented. So the first element that identifies this list as a function, it's fun. Then we have the parameters, which is an array with x, and then we have the body of the function, which is x2 times. Okay, so that's an introduction to this language, and yeah, it's experimental. It's on GitHub. It's called VimanaLang. You can get the code and try it out, and experiment with the interpreter. The interpreter is around 200 lines of PHP code. So it's intended to be small, this project. The system is intended to be small. And it's just for fun. It's not it's not the intention to make this into yet another programming language. Instead, it's an experiment for the fun of it.